Hi everybody, welcome to StashBlaster Quilts. My name is Maria Spatelnik and I'm here to help you make more quilts in less time with less stress. So, I'm a very tired girl today. We may wind up ending a little early. I don't have a whole lot of oomph left. It's been a heck of a couple of weeks, and today in particular was a really strong, heavy one. So, again, I'm wearing a purple shirt. You can tell I was working in the field today. But I had a client this morning, and then I spent all afternoon running around, running errands for clients. I went to an attorney's office to drop off some stuff. I went to a in-home care company. Then I went and I saw a client at the medical rehab. So it's just been one of those crazy kinds of things. That's after spending hours yesterday doing jewelry, going through it and getting a bunch of it sold for a client. And I'll tell you more about that later. So to be perfectly honest with you, I don't have a tip for you today. I do try, if this is your first time here, to have a tip of the day so that no video. Okay, hold on a second. Let me try that. Huh. Okay. Huh. Okay. Just the intro video. Okay, so it's on a different... Huh. Okay. So last time I had found something interesting that worked, that let me see what was coming up, but now it's not working properly. So let's try it. Hopefully you're seeing me now. Alright, so sorry about that, everybody. So yes, here's my purple shirt. Yes, I look like I've had a hard day, because I have. Judy, can you actually see me now? I hope so. Yes! Okay. So this really cool thing that I found isn't working right. Okay, what a shocker that is. Okay, anyway. So, I don't have a tip for you, because the whole 3 weeks, whatever it's been since I saw you, has gone just exactly like that. Anyway, so, again, I apologize for that. And for my technical problems, but sooner or later I'll get all this figured out and I'll be smooth as glass. Anyway, I did have some questions that were emailed to me after the last one of these that I did about the thread management I was talking about. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to update you on the wedding quilt, which I haven't had much time to work on, but I did finish the one block, so I can show you what the houses are all going to look like, and how I'm tracking all of the pieces that I need for this quilt. How about... Hold on, I can't see what this says. I got half of it all of a sudden. How about hang in there? Yeah, hang in there. That's a great tip. Try not to murder people. That's another good tip, because there's been a couple of times this last couple of weeks that I thought about it. Didn't seriously think about it, but for a fleeting moment, there was a couple of those. But anyway, at least I remembered the lights this time, so there you go. So I'll talk a little bit more about how I'm managing all the pieces and parts to this wedding quilt. This is going to be a long-term project, and I'll fill you in again on why. But let's get back to the thread management. I had gotten down so that let me see if I can get camera 3 to work. Camera 3 is not working. Okay, great. I guess we're going to replace that one too. So, okay, so if you see, I don't know if you can tell here, but there's almost no thread left on this. There's barely one, I call people. There's barely one layer of thread on this bobbin, and I mentioned how I would be spinning it onto a card, and people asked me what that was. I talked about it, you know, months and months, years ago, because this is actually my 3rd year of doing this, I think. And so I have explained it, but it's been quite a while, and I know some of you are new, so let me get into it. When I have a thread on the bobbin that is getting super thin, so you can see the spool through there, or when I have these little goober type sewing kit spools, I spin them onto bobbins because I don't know how much is here. And so I will spin it onto a bobbin, put it in my bobbin case, and then I use it as a top thread. The reason I have it on the top is that I will see the thread running out, and so I can stop at an appropriate time, which is what I did with this green one here. But when it gets down like this, I take it one step further. Now, obviously, you don't have to do this. But what I do is I have some cards that look like this. This is actually a professional one. This was in a sewing kit. You know, one of the kinds you got on an airplane back in the day or in a hotel room. But I've also made my own. So let me show you here. It just took either a little pair of scissors, and I just clipped the cardboard. There you go, you can see it better there. Or I would get out the pinking blade, the dull one from my rotary cutter, and I would do a whole bunch of them at once. And so what I do is I take the spool, not the spool, the bobbin, and I'm just going to take it and wrap it around between the two teeth here. So let me just, it's hard to get up here in the air where you can see it. Normally it's just down in my lap. Okay, spools, the bobbin is empty. And then I have slits on the ends to secure the thread. Okay, so you can see how they're secured on the sides. When I'm traveling, I can take all of my outfits and then come here to my little, formerly an M&M's jar, where I have all of these ones that I've spun onto cards, and I can get the ones that match my outfits. So I have the threads that I need if I need to replace a button, or if the hem gets torn out or something, just to tack it. There's not a huge amount here, but I can have 100 colors with me if I wanted to take that much, without having to carry very much at all. So I have them all baggied up by color. So here's my green baggie, right? Now some of these have a lot of the same. So for example, this is one where when I was just starting, I was carrying these, I was like, these are so handy. So I would take some of the bigger spools, bigger than these, and I just spun them onto cards, and I skipped the whole bobbin stage. That does work. And when I was sewing the underwater quilt, I did that. I used these a lot because I had so many different colors that I could get and carry downstairs and work with. But it's really quite handy, and I can see how much I have because this is just for handwork, and so it travels with me wherever I go. So when I was doing the flowers for the grandmother's flower garden, the flowers were all put together based on these cards, and then since everything else is white, it's all just white. But it all works out really handy. And I don't have big bobbins for only a tiny amount, big spools for just a tiny amount of thread, so it also lets me store my thread more efficiently. I hope that all makes sense now. Alright, so let me get these out of the way. Let's talk about the houses. So this is your first time here. My son got married in February, mid-month, and so I had asked them before the wedding if they would like a wedding quilt, and they said yes. And so I asked them, you know, I was thinking about doing a temperature quilt, what did they think? And I showed them some examples of temperature quilts, and they thought that was kind of cool. If you have not seen one, what you do is you track the highs and lows of every day during your given period, which could be a month. It doesn't have to be an entire year. In this case, I'm doing their entire first year of marriage, including their wedding day and their anniversary day, so 366 days. And then you do something. Now, the one I was originally going to do was just a square with a slash, and the square was going to be the high color for the day, and the slash was going to be the low for the day. That was going to be it. And you can pick 10 fabrics. They can even be in the same color family. And each 10 degrees is a different one of those fabrics. And I kept wondering, okay, how much fabric do I need? What design do I want to do? And of course, I didn't pick an easy one. And I then complicated it further because that's who I am. If this is your first time here, you will learn this. So I did finish the first house that we started to do last time, and I'm going to do the other two with you today. But this is what my little house looks like. So the number here, the 220, that's the date. This is for February 20th. And the highs and the lows were both 30 degrees or under. Well, under 30 degrees, 29 or under. So that's my gray-black category. So this is what my little house looks like. And of course it's going to lose another ½ inch in both directions because of the 1/4 inch seam allowances. But I can put a little French knot as a doorknob on there. I can hang a little wreath on there for a special occasion. All kinds of fun stuff can happen with this. So that's what the houses are all going to look like. Now, instead of picking just 10 fabrics, what I decided to do was to do 10 color families. So, for example, let me pull this up here. 217. Let me just double check what that temperature is. Okay, so anything in the 40s is green. Okay, so I have 3 different greens here. So I can have houses next to each other with the same high temperature that aren't exactly the same fabric, because that was the one thing that looking at temperature quilts kind of bugged me, is you'd have these huge chunks where it's all one fabric basically, and then there'd be other areas where there was a lot of transitional fabrics, and it started to annoy me because I wanted to be able to have more variety than just those 10 fabrics, which I know sounds weird to have more than 10 fabrics in a quilt. But in my case, I wanted it to look more like a town where you can paint your house however you want, including if you wanted to have ivy growing on it or doing something else with it. So each temperature range has a color, but it can have any fabric within that color. Now, there are some fabrics that I've rejected. Big floral prints, when you cut them into the strips that you need to do for the houses, those aren't going to work, because then you're going to wind up with a house that's half pink and half blue, let's say. So what temperature was it as your high or low? So that makes it a little bit different too. So I did it by color family. Now, in order to track things, I am using an Excel spreadsheet, which I color-coded by month just to make it easier for me to find stuff. But another thing that I'm doing is I am creating these cards where, let me see if I can find, that's all green still. No, I'm not having any luck. I thought I had them handy and I don't. Okay, so for example, if a house is in the 70s, it'll be a red house. So I've then clipped the days that I have so far, the house numbers, and so I can just pick my reds and put them on this card. and then also clip the house number with it. And I can go several deep on one card. And so when I come up here and I'm changing threads, I can do all of the red houses that I have at that point. Instead of doing a red, a green, a purple, a red, a blue, an orange, a red, instead of doing it house by house. So that's kind of the idea there. Now, the doors are different. The doors don't make a difference based on temperature. I just picked a door I liked with that fabric. So this little guy has a yellow door. Well, this one does too, but this one has a tan door. So as long as it's not the roof, because the roof is our low temperature for the day, and it's not the body of the house, which is our high temperature of the day, the door can be any color that I want. Okay? And then all of the houses are going to have this little white house number plate. When I realized I could do that, have the house numbers be the date, I thought that was kind of cool. It'll also help me make sure I'm putting the pieces in the right order, because one of the problems with a temperature quilt is people will often make the pieces and then they'll have a month block in between to try to make the numbers come out better. 31 blocks, if you're just doing the month, is a difficult number to have lay out nicely. So if you add other blocks in, it works better. I still wasn't super happy. Then you start getting into more modern designs where maybe you have some blocks that are falling off or something. But if you look at it, you don't know what day the high and low was. So by putting the house numbers on, they'll know what was July 4th like. It was a high of this in this range and a low in this range. I'm actually going to include the chart on the back of the quilt along with the fabrics for those colors, I'm thinking. Because if I have like an extra 1-inch block, it'll only be 1/2 inches when they're done, but I can have all of the different fabrics all laid out in the temperature ranges too. So you could say, oh, well, look at that. We had a lot of days in the blue range for whatever temperature that was, and not very many in the orange range, I thought that would be another little interesting tracking kind of piece on the back, because they're not going to line up exactly, because I'm not going to have the same number of 40-degree days as I have 80-degree days. So it's a little weird, but my son is also a math guy, so a math and computer guy. So I think he's going to really appreciate that when this is all over. So that's how I'm tracking that. So all of these cards can just sit next to my sewing machine, and I can just sew whatever I want to sew. And then as they're partially sewn, like the ones I started last time, these are the two of the three from last time, I can still clip them back on here. So they all stay together until the block is done, like this, at which point it can go on the design wall behind me, or I can have another card and just clip finished houses to it. So that's the plan. That's how it's going. I have not had a chance to finish laying out what I think is going to work for the final design, partially because I've been using my dining room table for a lot of other projects, including yesterday, like I was talking about. So I have a gem and jewelry buyer who comes here rather than going to the client's house, because I have heat and air and all of that stuff, which some of the houses I go into don't. The lighting is good where she does her work, because I make sure of that. There's a nice, clean, working bathroom. There's some nice little amenities. Plus, since I'm not at the client's house, I'm not limited to this little block of time that she can be out there looking at things and have to make multiple trips. She can come to my house for hours and hours. Well, that's what wound up happening. Yesterday, she was at our house for 11 hours looking at jewelry from one house. When I showed up to this house, they filled my car with bins of jewelry before they even signed the contract. They wanted this stuff gone. because they didn't want to have it out where somebody might see it and then break into the house, and it's an estate. So I brought it all back to my house, and then once I had the contract and then I could set up a date with my gem and jewelry buyer. Now, 99% of this is costume, okay? But she bought a whole bunch of this. It was over almost $2,800 check to the family. And now, tomorrow, I'm going to take all of the costume stuff that's left and take it to the online auction company, and they're going to sell it in lots and make them some more money off of it. So that's the idea, is whenever possible we like to maximize the income to our clients. And so that's one way that I'm doing it. But she had to look at every piece, and the family had packed these bins. I hadn't. So there was also fabric in there, and there was little glass jars and buttons and all kinds of strange stuff in there. So in order for her to get done in the one long day, I spent the time opening up all the bags the stuff was in and pre-doing some things. So she has some super strong magnets, which if your piece is either steel, stainless steel, silver or gold or platinum, the magnet doesn't react to it. But if it's got some sort of nickel or some base metal under there that keeps it from being a precious metal, it'll zap itself right onto that magnet, which is kind of fun. It's terrifying sometimes, but like silver plate will do that. So I can take a bunch of necklaces and put them out, and you just run the magnet through it, and they all just go up onto the magnet. There is a trick, though, because sometimes just the clasp might be magnetic, and sometimes the necklace is. The chain is, but the clasp is silver. So you do have to pay attention on the different parts of the necklaces, but I spent all day doing that. So my hands were just killing me from that. But I got up to get a drink, and then I just said, you know what, I'm going to grab my lunch, because now that I've washed my hands and all that, I'll grab my lunch and then I'll go back to it. At which point, I accidentally kicked the chair in the kitchen. Now, normally it's free-floating. That would have hurt regardless. But it was smack up to the microwave. So when I kicked it, it didn't move. But my toe did break. So I spent the rest of yesterday hobbling around. And then today, well, then we did this whole thing with the jewelry stuff. So that was how I finished the day. But by the time we were done with that, I didn't even shower. I went to a client first in the morning, an assessment, which was a very stinky place, and I really wish I could have gotten a shower, but I was helping her. So by the time we were done, and I got my shower and I got to bed, it was well after 11. And then this morning, I went to a different house. This one was not stinky at all, but it is incredibly full. It is full to the point that I told them I will not work in that house without an assistant, because everything is an avalanche danger. And at one point, my foot got stuck. My left foot, the one with the broken toe, got stuck. And in trying to pull it out, I rolled my right ankle and did something to my hip. So now my hand doesn't work, my back doesn't work, my left foot has a broken toe, my right ankle is messed up, and my left knee and hip are really in pain too. So it's been a day or two that have really, really taken a bite out of me. But it's alright. Everything will be fine. I've had broken toes before. I don't think that I broke anything in my ankle. I think it's just a small sprain, just enough to be really irritating. But the guy whose house we're working in is sweet. It's always easier to work for somebody, no matter how hard the physical part of the job is, it's much easier to work for somebody who's just flat out nice. So I worked at his house this morning with an assistant. And we accomplished a lot not as much as I wanted to, because there's some items he wants from the house that we haven't found yet. But then I got home, got some lunch, and then I went and I took things to an attorney, because I've got another client where the family is all over the country, and they have me in there going through looking for valuables. So I did that a couple weeks ago, but I still had the baggie of stuff because we had to take photos so the family could see the things and decide what they wanted as part of their share. So I then went to the attorneys and I dropped that off, at which point she also wanted to talk to me about a different client. So I'm standing there on my broken foot, broken toe, wrenched ankle, knee, hip, back, the whole 9 yards, trying to make sense to people. And then at the end of that, I went and to an in-home care company that we do some work with, because they needed some information from me, so I dropped off some materials there. And then I went to visit the client whose house I was in this morning, because he is in a skilled nursing, or what's known as a rehab. I know that I'm not the only one out there that when you hear rehab, you automatically think drug and alcohol rehab. But rehab is now the common term for skilled nursing facilities, which are an awful lot like hospitals without being hospitals. The next step down from skilled nursing is assisted living, and then after, lower than that, is independent living with in-home care, in terms of your levels of care. So he's in skilled nursing, and so I went and saw him there and talked to him about what I found and what I didn't find, and I got some answers from him about where some things are he wanted, because I could show him the photos. The first time I couldn't even get photos of the whole house. And I still don't have photos of the whole house, but I have more of it now. But I went and I did that, and then I got home just in time to do some dinner, check emails, have some dinner, and then come up here and get ready for this. So it's been a very busy day. But overall, despite the pain, it's been a good day. Tomorrow I'm teaching a class. Oh, you guys don't know that. Let me just double check the spelling on this. If you go to IPMDC, it's a .org. It's an Inova site. Inova is a major hospital chain here, but they have a Parkinson's Movement Disorder Center, and I do a monthly talk there. If you register for it, it's the first Thursday of the month, and this month I'm talking about paperwork. But every month I'm going to have either a room by room, so we're going to talk about how to organize a specific room, or a concept. So last month was on safety. They do not record these classes, conversations, whatever you want to call them, because they want people to be very comfortable sharing, and they don't want it out there forever. So if you are interested, let me know, or you can go onto that website. There's several of us that do this, and so you could see me on a regular basis if you wanted to. It's on Zoom, and it's really an interesting group of people. So I'll be doing that tomorrow. And then I will be taking all that costume jewelry to the seller for the estate sale. So again, another busy day, followed by another busy day, followed by another busy day. But that's why I quilt. Whenever I have a minute, I'm quilting. Unfortunately, because of my hands, I'm not getting time to do handwork, which is my preference for letting me, relax and calm down, because A, it's slow, which is nice, and B, I can do it downstairs while watching TV with my husband, and we get to spend some time together, which is one of my favorite things to do. So it's kind of a shame that I can't be doing the handwork, but life is what life is, so we make it work one way or another. Okay, how am I going to do this? Because now that this camera is out, I cannot use it to show you the sewing machine. Okay, so what I'm going to try to do is the camera that I'm looking at is actually behind the monitor, and it's high, and it's attached to the shelving across from me. So what I'm going to try to do is see if I can move it forward and tip it down and see if you can see the machine. Okay? But it's going to get kind of weird, so I just wanted you to be prepared. Because there's not a whole lot of space here. And I think I'm also going to have to move the monitor out of the way to have any chance at this. So, I'm hung up on the monitor. Here we go. Okay, so first I swing the monitor out of the way. And now I'm going to try to bring this down. Oh, and it can only go just so far. Hopefully that'll be good enough, so you can see what I'm doing. But it means that in order to see my face, I'm going to have to move it up again, so hopefully nobody gets car sick. Okay, so now normally I work with leaders and enders, but because I have gray thread in here, I tend to only do leaders and enders with either white or black unless I know I have a lot of a particular thing I'm doing. In this case, if I was doing these green pieces, I could use another roof and more green pieces as a leader ender for sides. Because the house is, because this is put on last, I could actually make as many of these as I wanted in advance. The worst that would happen is I would, if I wound up making one where I didn't have that temperature range. Yeah, this is really hard for you to see on as far as I can tell. There we go. I could, if I made too many, I could just square these up and have 1-inch half square triangles at the end. Not the worst thing that's ever happened. But the advantage is that since all of my grass is the same color, I can make a bunch of houses in advance. I can make houses in advance except for the house number, and I can make a bunch of roofs, and then whenever the time comes, I can just pop them together. So, okay, these are the ones that we were doing last time. So I've sewn the green sides to the sides of the houses. In this case, I also have the roof done. Okay, but here are my sides. I'm trying to see if you can see them, but my monitor's going this direction now, so I'm looking at it at a really weird angle. Here's our house number. This is the front door. This is the lintel above the front door. And then this is the house number side. Okay? So this is how this whole thing is going to assemble. I hope it looks like you can see. Okay. But since I've already sewn these, I'm a little bit ahead of the game, which is kind of nice. So I'm going to do the door first, just because. Right sides together. I'm going to hold the threads down, and then I'm going to needle down. And then I'm going to sew my 1/4-inch seam. Now, because these pieces are so small, I do have this tweezer. I actually won this as a door prize along with a pair of scissors. I hated the scissors because they were very uncomfortable. They were just pressed out of a stamped piece of metal, so the edges were very sharp. Not sharp as in like gonna cut you sharp, but there was no rounding of it at all, so it was like a perfect edge. And so when you were cutting, you were putting that solid pointed edge right up against the skin, so I didn't like it. But I did keep the tweezers because I like them a lot. So I'm going to put them on this side, just to make sure that that piece doesn't buckle as it's going through. Okay, so just there. Okay, and as soon as I get to the end, then I'll go ahead and I'll start by putting, here we go, the piece that goes, sorry, I had this backwards. The taller piece goes on the top. So with the number right side up, the bigger pieces on the top like this, I'm going to put them right sides together. Now in this case, because I have two of these that have gray, I can use each of these as a leader and ender for the other until the very end. So that's a nice thing. So this is house number 1 that I'm working on here. I'm going to put those pieces up there. And I am going to do that. I am going to use the second piece. Oh, this one I didn't do the stitching on. Alright, well then I'm not going to do that because that's going to get too confusing. Excuse me. Okay, so I'm going to take my seam ripper, or you can use nippers or whatever you want, and I'm just going to snip the threads between these two. And I will use my scissors to cut off my tail here. Okay. Alright. Unfortunately, my iron cooled down. I am going to be pressing this away from me, so I'm going to... I normally do... Hold on, I'm trying to get so that you can see what I normally do go ahead and warm the seam and then finger press it and then press it. In this particular case, I'm just going to go ahead and finger press it. I could stop here. The finger pressing is generally good enough, but I like really crisp folds, so I am going to hit it with the iron real quick. It's only just barely heating up, so I'm going to need to leave it on a little bit longer. I do have an ironing board, the little table over here on my left. I know it's out of your sight, but the camera is out of reach, so I can't really move it and show you. Okay, so here's my door. So I've got my left wall, my door, then I'll have the number piece and the other wall. So now I can put these two together. Right sides together. With the tweezers. That's a horrible angle for you guys. I'm sorry. I do want to just do this one house, and then unless any questions show up in the chat, we'll call it good for the day. Alright, so I'm going to cut this other piece off on the back. Now the nice thing when I was doing the green is that I could do multiple houses of doing the green to a gray, because those are the threads I already had in the machine, which again is the reason why with the cards I can go ahead and process a bunch of them at once. Alright. So with the number, I'm going to also press towards the house color, so it doesn't show up on the others on the shadow back through on the fabric. So this is 219 as you can see here. Okay. So now I'm going to do the bottom piece. And like I said, when I'm going to sit down to do this, I'm going to do a whole bunch of them at once so that I can get ahead. This is not something I want to be trying to do a house every day, because doing it this way is actually going to be much more time consuming than the way I'm talking about. Of course, you're seeing it at its worst because I'm doing it one at a time. Okay, so here is the door. Okay, I know. I'm trying to get where you can see. Okay, there we go. So here's the door here. So this is done, and I will press. Generally, I'm going to press towards the outside. That's just a personal preference, so it's completely up to you. I'm pressing now. Okay, so that's the left side of my house. Now in this case, I'm going to have to, oh, okay. For a second there, I thought I had lost my thread. Earlier today, my top thread broke and I didn't notice it right away, which was not fun. That's what I was doing when I was waiting for this to start, was the one that I showed you that I trimmed up. So I got to thread my machine an extra time. Not the worst thing to ever happen, but it wasn't exactly what I'd planned. Okay, so I have finger pressed the 219. Now I'm giving it a good solid press here. So as you can see, the house part is starting to come together. So now I'm going to put the 219 piece to the outer side. Now, I'm going to have to hold the threads down, needle down, and then put my piece under. I'm still going to hold the threads with my ring finger now, so that they don't pull and put a little snarl underneath. I prefer to stitch when possible with the seams like these on top, so I can control what's happening a little bit better. On the other side of this, it's a straight piece, so it takes less thought. It doesn't always work, but it's a nice option. Okay, I'm going to pull it off again. I'm going to cut my threads. You don't have to cut your tails, because when you trim, when you square the block up, you'll probably cut them off anyway. But it's just a habit of mine to try to keep my squares as clean as possible, so there's less to undo or trim later, or threads to bury, that kind of thing. So it's a personal preference, but that's just what I do. Okay, so now we're here for the last seam of the building. So we have the left side with the door and the right side with the number. We put them face to face and we stitch them together. Hold the threads, needle down, put the piece right to the needle. Start stitching. This top piece shifted just a little bit, so I'm going to straighten her out. And stitch. Okay. So I'm going to press this. You have an option of if you want to trim the block at this point, or if you want to do it once it's fully assembled. As a general rule, I'm going to go ahead and put the roof on and then trim it. So in this case, I'm going to press away from the door. Okay? But you could change that. Especially, for example, if we get any temperature days over 100, the color is white. So in that particular case, I'm going to want to make sure that I'm pressing away from the white. Okay. Now, I can see that when I sewed this, I didn't get it exactly square. So I am going to go ahead and trim it. I'm going to trim the top. I'll trim the bottom at the end. Yeah, it's off just a little bit. But I can fix it before I put the roof on, which is nice. Alright, so I'm going to align this so it lines up with the lower side here. And now I have a nice square flat top to attach my roof to. So you certainly can do this. It's completely, obviously, in your ballpark. But next I take the roof here, and I'm going to put it right sides together with my house. Now, depending on how perfect your seam allowances are, you may find that you're going to take the average for exactly where your roof is. That's fine too. In this particular case, yeah, my seam allowances are off a little bit. I'm not sure why. Actually, I am. I should have checked it before I started. But, again, no time. So, oh, I didn't put the needle down first. Sorry. That's okay. I am going to go ahead and stitch this. And while I generally prefer to do the seams, like I said, up, in this case I'm doing it down just because you can watch it come through. Okay, needle up. I'm going to trim this. Alright, and then I'm going to press it, and then I'm going to trim it to the 2-inch square. Okay, oops. Right, but there it is upside down. So, let me give her a press. Open it up and do a quick finger press. Then press. Okay. Then get with the cutting mat. This is why sewing a bunch of them in a row is going to be helpful, because then you're not going back and forth with the cutting mats and with the ironing and all of that as much. Okay. So, this is going to be a 2.5-inch square because we need to have that 1/2 inch for our seam allowance. So I'm going to pick my best 2.5. So side 1 and side 2. And then, of course, you could rotate the mat, which is, of course, the best way to do this. But here at this particular sewing table, I'm really limited on space. So if I had a lot of these to do, it's the kind of thing that I could do on my ironing board down in the living room, where I sit and I prepare fabrics and things. Again, in front of the TV with my husband. Okay, close that. Get these extra threads out of here. And so here is house 219. Okay. Actually, if I wonder if I can move this light, get a little bit more on the house. A little bit. It's still not gonna be great. There we go. There's house 219. So again, my color is black and gray, so these would have been exactly the same color if I was just doing the 10 different fabrics instead of the color families. Yeah, I know the doors are the same and these are next door to each other, but I'm okay with that. An option would have been to turn it into a townhouse by not doing this strip here the same way and then just putting these two together into one unit without the grass in between. But I said, what the heck? So these two happen to be separate. Okay? Alright, let me move the camera back around. Oh, not too horribly bad. It doesn't appear to be anyway. So, those are the little houses, and that's what we're going to be doing for the rest of the year here at my studio, because it's a wedding quilt. I'm going to keep having more of these to make every day. There'll be a new one. But like I said, I'm going to do them in chunks, and I'm going to do them by color families so that I can do a whole bunch of the houses at once, and then I can always come back through and do the roofs whenever it's convenient. So another thing I did to keep my life a little easier, I need 3/4 inch strips for the yard on the sides of the houses, and I need 1 inch squares for the corners of the roofs. So I cut a whole bunch of them because I made strips of the 1 inch, and then I've drawn the diagonal line on some of them, and so as they get diagonal lines drawn on, they'll move from these piles over to here, and then at any point I can go ahead and sew a whole bunch of these. I do have a couple of cards. Well, that's actually a house. Let me move the house off of here. Oh, there's the third one. I had it on a different card. Sorry about that. I will deal with that some other time. But these are roofs. So I know that I'm going to have some days in the 30s as the temperatures get colder for the new year. So I've already prepped these ones. They're ready to go at any time. When I have more time, I'll be able to go through and, if I want to, mark which house they go to. But at that point, it doesn't really matter. I'll have these done, and I can just find the one that looks the best with that house that's in that color family. As it gets closer to the end of the year, then it's time to get more picky, so I'm not wasting a lot. But right now, there is no waste, because it'll happen sometime. There's going to be a 50-degree low. Guarantee it. So I have a little bit of more leeway right now for just doing some in advance. So I have a card for those as well. And then they all sit in this taquitos box that I just chopped. I've got some more clips in here so that I can make more of these whenever I want. And I can just go ahead and add to these cards that have what the temperature range is, all of the numbers that qualify for that, and then I can go to my red scraps, and, or in this case, purple scraps, and put together the sets for the various houses. So that's it. It's not hard. It's not difficult. It's time consuming, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But this makes my life a little bit easier, so that's why I'm doing this method. And then, like I said, as the houses get finished, they can just go up onto the wall. And it doesn't matter if they get knocked down, because they have their numbers right on them. When I told my husband, he's like, well, aren't you going to have some duplicates? And I'm like, no, never. Never. With the exception of the wedding date and anniversary date. At which point I'm debating, should I number it 2025 and 2026 as the two house numbers and just have them be off on their own, or how I want to do it. Haven't decided yet. Sadly, I do not appear to have won the embroidery machine at the drawing that happened yesterday. I put in my tickets, but apparently somebody else won it. Because that would have been nice for this little guy if I could have just embroidered a little something on there if it's a special day like Halloween or whatever. I'll just have to do it by hand when my hands work. So we're ending a little bit early, but not tremendously. Thank you so much for sticking it out. If you enjoyed today, please like and subscribe. Hit the bell, do all that good stuff. Why do some quilters make quilts faster than other quilters? Again, this is sideways to me. It's almost on edge, which is why it's hard to read. It depends. On how much precision and it being perfect matters. I can tell you right now that these houses are not perfect. They're a little bit wonky. So's my son. That's perfectly fine. Some people, though, if there's something wrong, if it's the tiniest bit off, they take it apart and they put it back together. That's something that slows people down. A lot of times people don't have the confidence to put the pedal down. There are some things like quilting. I have to turn my machine down so that when my foot is all the way down, it's not going to go as fast as I would like it to go. Because I am a production quilter. I'm in for speed. I have so little time to quilt, and I love doing it so much that I want to accomplish something. And so if I told myself that this is all the quilting I was going to do in any given day, it'd be nice that I had some time at the machine, but it would drive me nuts. So I do tend to think in terms of how I'm laying out my pieces and my process to be as efficient as possible to save time wherever I can. So like I said, all of these houses with the green, right? I can sew all of those together and just have my machine set up that it's going to be green in the bottom. I can even have it be green on the top because I've got a green seam, right? And I could sew 366 of these at once if I wanted to. And then I'd have to come back and do the other parts, just like I did them today. But it would be much more efficient than doing one house at a time. Just like making all the house numbers at one time is easier than every day cutting out a 3/4 of an inch by 1 inch rectangle and then figuring out where the number goes and then inking in the number. Now, had I decided to not put the numbers on first, I could make all of these houses and leave the numbers blank. But I know me, and when I was first writing out, because I did it by hand, the days of the year, I put a 29th of November in, and there was no 29th of November this year. Had I done that after the house was done, I would either have to pick it apart or build an extra house. So by doing it this way, that's not going to be an issue for me. And I know that I didn't misnumber something. So I hope that makes sense. A lot of it's in the thinking process, as well as just being willing to say, close, it's good enough. These little houses, unless you get right up on them, you won't know that they're not perfect. Okay, and they are all going to be squared up to the 2 inches, so they're all going to be the right size. Yeah, one might have a little bit of green showing past the roof. One little roof might get chopped a little bit in the corner. It's not the end of the world. And so that's another reason why I tend to be pretty quick, is it's rare that I get my seam ripper out because something's not perfect. My seam ripper comes out because I did something stupid like do right side to wrong side. And so they're both right side up. And then I'm just like, ugh! And I'll tell you that there's sometimes I do that and I look at the back of that one fabric and go, is it good enough? Because if there's only one piece of it, nobody will ever know it's the back. And I paid for both sides of the fabric. So that's another thing where I can fix it. Do I need to? Maybe not. Okay? So that's another reason why. Just having, if you build in the efficiency, it helps. But you have to sew at the speed that works for you. I won a 1600 race because my foot was never fully down on the pedal. You know, it just never was, except when I was flipping the pieces around to sew the next one. I even sewed them without cutting them apart, because then when I got to the end, I could stop, this far from the end, run my scissor through, finish the seam, fold it, sew it, snip it. So I snipped it after instead of doing it first. So, I mean, it's all designed for speed. My quilts are never going to win awards. Okay? Unless it's for, craziest quilt or silliest quilt or, something along those lines. It's never going to be for the precision of my sewing. Because mostly I don't have the patience for that. But a lot of people love to slow sew. A lot of people like to spend their time. They like the feeling of it just slowly going through the machine. And that's a perfectly fine thing. My handwork, it's a slow process compared to a sewing machine. I'm fairly quick at hand sewing. For those of you who have been around for a while, or if you want to go back in time, you can actually watch the underwater quilt as I'm assembling all the pieces, because they were all done on the display wall, and I showed every 2 weeks or every session how much I had accomplished in that time frame. So you got to watch it be built, right from the I'm designing it phase, and I had up all of the hexagons. The grandmother's flower garden, I've got all the flowers done. I just now have to put all the arcs on and then start assembling them. They're all in the box over there. I would normally be getting a lot done on that. I just am having a lot of trouble with my thumbs right through here. It's probably carpal tunnel. And since I use my hands so much at work, it's not getting a break. And so it's going to take a while for them to heal. If they do. If they don't, then I have to start looking at hand surgery. In which case, we'll do something else during these times. But first and third Wednesday of the month, it does look like my time is up. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you had a good time. And I will see you in 2 weeks, because that'll be the third Wednesday of April. All right? Take care, and y'all have a good time.